Born Primitive Outdoor is proud to partner with Montana Knife Company, Marsupial Gear, Evolution Outdoors, Sheep Feet, and Capture Gear. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to our sponsors. Hello, everybody. Aron Snyder with Born Primitive Outdoor podcast, and this is a special podcast because I have my very good friend Dale Perry from Evolution Outdoor, and Dale and I have known each other for over a decade.
Yeah.
But Dale was coming back from a TAC event. He's leaving his trailer here, so we figured this would be a good time to knock out a podcast, not just audio, but video. For anybody listening in right now, you'll be able to watch this podcast on YouTube as well, which will be a much better podcast. We do have quite a bit of stuff in front of us. So, Dale, appreciate the friendship. Appreciate you swinging by.
Absolutely. It was great. I mean, we just did the South Dakota TAC, and it was great to have everybody come out and see the new products and get to touch and feel everything. And I think that's probably the most important thing is as we're doing this, it's just letting people understand that we're in this for the long haul. And we're just trying to improve. So any of that customer feedback and all that stuff is awesome. And it was nice to just be able to come by here and hang out for a while.
Yeah. And I think we've done podcasts before. I wanted on this podcast specifically to make sure visually that I go over questions that I've had asked of me and then kind of show it with what we have in front of us and cover some shit that doesn't really have anything to do with evolution, like 5-fletched arrows, which you got me into. But starting out for a brief kind of history, I guess, is Dale designed a broadhead many years ago. I guess it was Bloodsport or...
Well, no, it was Gravedigger.
Gravedigger.
No limit archery, yeah.
Yep, and it was a hybrid broadhead that I killed a shit ton of animals with, and that would have been in 2012, 13, is it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't know you yet, but I was just shooting a bunch of shit with them. You and I met, and, you know, at that point, well, you can take it from there. What happened? Like,
before
I get myself into trouble.
Yeah. All it's shit. Yeah. So no, we were growing fast. We had great success with the product. So we were purchased. We were bought by a large equity firm. Plano Synergy was the company that I was purchased by, but we were owned by a large fund. And so in doing that, it was an opportunity for me to kind of peek behind the curtain, if you would, see how the big companies are doing it. And was not impressed.
Yeah, so that's when the broadhead went to shit, and I stopped using it. So,
in the short term, yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, I don't know who designed these headphones, but I have a fat head, and these are loose. Is it?
Yeah.
This was built for a dude with a fucking dome. Like, good Lord. Anyhow, so the broadhead ended up, as time went on, having some issues. I'm not speaking for Dale. This was me using it from what it was to what it ended up, and I stopped using them for a while, and then you came back out with what we have in front of us, which is the Jekyll and the Hyde, and a different system for opening.
Correct. So basically when I sold, and you've heard me talk about patents and stuff like that, and so I sold the patent on the locking system of what the Gravedigger was, and in that concept, the whole deal, I was always trying to better that system because it was touchy. It could get odd. You can over tighten or loosen, whatever. So this was one that I had in the back of my mind. And when I left Plano Synergy, I went with this system. And by design, it was not supposed to be. I mean, I never even thought about the interchangeability of it.
Yeah.
But when this system worked, the locking system worked, it made it very possible to interchange the blades.
Yeah. So with what's in front here, and I want to go step by step with what I use, how I use it, and go into a little bit of the Q&A stuff that I've gotten most frequently. So micro diameter arrows, I am not a huge fan of. Well, I love micro diameter arrows. I don't like the components of micro diameter arrows for the most part, so I prefer a glue-in system. And when I say glue-in, this would be a glue-in practice point that Dale offers. Yep. And the broadhead, which is right here, this is a glue-in system broadhead. So I hot melt these in. Not all hot melt is built the same. I want to make sure and cover that. Easton hot melt is really good, and then like the Kimsha hot melt. But not everybody may want to hot melt these in. The black rubber glue works great. I don't know what you use, but you know, for rednecks that use Gorilla Glue, probably not the best option, but it'll hold.
Well, there's no, well, and the reason Gorilla Glue or that kind of thing doesn't hold as well is it sets real quick and it's in there and they can go out and shoot it. But it has no flexibility.
No impact.
Yep.
It breaks
and so
it.
It'll break it.
Yeah.
So we use a hot melt called Tough Guy Infinity Bond.
Is that good? I've seen it.
It's really good.
So a Tough Guy Infinity Bond is what I'm fucking trying to tell you. So.
Small plug here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it heats real good. You don't have a super high temperature that you need to get it to, so you can, and I know there's a lot of arrows companies that don't like if you heat it up, you don't want it messes the carbon and stuff. This doesn't have a high heat thing that you got to get to. If you play with it, it'll slide right in, or if you just touch the broadhead with the flame for a few seconds, it's enough to break the glue down and get it out without ruining the arrow.
Gotcha. So with the reason that I like the glue in, it's just more durable on a micro diameter system. You can certainly use micro diameter components and screw in broadheads. There's no issue with any of that. I just like glue ins when you can do it.
Correct. Correct. If you're willing to commit to having practice arrows and having honey arrows, then I feel in the micro diameter there's nothing better.
So with that is a commitment, and I want to make sure people understand this, that when I say a commitment, the best thing that I would say to do is build 6 with glue-in practice heads and build your other 6 or another dozen and a half for the season, and don't touch them. And when I say don't touch them, build them correctly. I've got tons of videos on that. Spin them, square the ends, all that stuff. But it's a better system in the long run to have a glue-in, but you don't have to have it. So to answer some of the questions I've gotten, this is a few examples of what I do. So this is, I have 185 grains total up front here, 10 grain collar, 175 grain point. This is a 300 spine TKO or Evolution Outdoor, which is basically your brand of.
Yeah. We partnered with Victory and did a branding for ourselves, and so that's what we offer.
So these are cooler because they say Evolution. Your penis grows a little bit from this. You are a better hunter if you get
animals.
These.
Look at it, they just fall over.
They do. They just die. It's crazy. So with this system here, this is my general go-to, which is the Hyde glue-in 185 total, 175 head, 10 grain collar. This is kind of my go-to, and that again is a glue-in. So people have asked, well, what do you do if you want to use something different? Well, the easy system for this. This was just a component that I grabbed this morning when I was fiddling. That's an Easton, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So whether it be Easton or the Evolution or, the VAP, this is a 50 grain collar and a 125 grain. This is a judo tip. This is same deal. So you have the option here. This is the Jekyll, and these are 125 screw-ins, correct?
That's the dangerous game. That's the Jekyll.
Yes. Jekyll and Dangerous
So
Game.
this one adds 25. This solid blade adds 25 grains to whatever base weight you have.
So this one's 150.
Correct.
Yeah. And so what I have for me, if I have 150 and, so I'm at 200 grains here.
Right.
With anything and I know people are going to go crazy, I can't tell the difference, believe it or not, between 185 and 200 grains up front total out to 40, 50 yards. Would you?
I would agree with that. And you could, if you had the outsert system, which is a 50 grain, you could put a 125 on there.
Yep.
And then you're only literally 10 grains off. You're 175 and 185. So, and that tends to work really, really well. I mean, most be honestly, and you've heard me say this before, the average consumer cannot tell 10 grains even out to 100 yards.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And so for me, I have glue-in Jekylls, right? This is here, and this is one of my practice ones, 125, or excuse me, 175 glue-in with the collar. You can get a screw-in 125.
Yep.
And then you can have it close to exact with a 50 grain component. Now, for me, since I'm not going to be dropping, did I say something wrong there?
No.
Okay. I'm not going to be dropping bombs with a fixed blade that often. When I say bombs, I'm talking way out there. And so for me, inside of 40, I'm totally okay with a variance of having this more solid blade here, which is the dangerous game.
Right.
Now, this isn't something I just made up and I can show people shooting or whatever. 40 yards and inside, I don't mind the difference in weight, not a big deal, but I can match it exact if I wanted to.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And so then whatever 50 grain component you have, if you have a small game head of some sort like a judo, you just have that screwed in and you are within 10 grains the same weight of these two systems.
Right.
So now I shoot a lot out to 120 yards, and I can't tell the difference in 10 grains out to 100 from my ability. And so
it's 99.9% of the people out there cannot tell the difference.
Yeah, and so when I say that, like when Maria was filming me yesterday or spotting for me the day before, at 100 yards, I've got a 3D target out there, and I'm inside the 10 ring all the time, and then occasionally I'll chunk one out in the 8 because I, suck at times. So it's fine with me. So that's the system that I use, and then I personally not a big fan of aluminum half-out type components and field tips. Personally,
right.
So I'm a big proponent of this system, which is your glue-in field point system with the collar.
Right.
And so this is what I practice with. The aluminum stuff, you can get it, but eventually these can bend and you can have some deflection in them. And if you didn't hot melt them in, it's hard to change these out and you're going to ruin your arrow. So it's just some stuff to think about, which is why I use hot melt. So that's kind of and I have a bunch of these 150 screw ins. And the first thing that because there is a 15 grain variance.
Yep.
As I shot them out to 60 yards, and I can't tell the difference, but to be safe, 40. It's just the durability and noise of this blade. And it's probably a mental thing for me, and it's not even there. I think this blade is slightly quieter than this blade.
And it's possible. I mean, to me, I feel like you hear fletching more than the broadhead.
You definitely hear fletching more than the broadhead.
And so is it relative? I mean, I would suspect probably it is at some point. But
I've had people go down range and blind taster choice can't tell.
Yeah,
and can't. And so, again, it's a mental thing for me.
For sure.
But durability-wise, this is going to be a little bit more durable.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, again, it's worth the 15 grain variance because when I'm shooting a fixed blade, it's up close and personal, not worried about dropping bombs.
Right.
So that's what I have been doing. Now, this year when I shot my bear, you were like, hey, dummy, you use a Whitetail Fury. And I hadn't. And I'm horrible. I'm not very good at bugging Dale too much for shit. So you called and were like, try the Whitetail Fury.
Right.
And that, I'll let you take it here in a second. I would have zero issue hunting elk with that broadhead, but you may break a blade, right? It could break a blade.
Well, hopefully it won't break because they're designed not to break, so they're designed to bend.
But I mean, if you hit some serious shit, it may bend.
It's something. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's basically the Hyde. It's basically this broadhead. The Hyde is a 2-inch. I'm going to roll these open.
You fucker.
They're good still. I'm going to roll these open. So that's a 2-inch blade. The Whitetail Furies are 2 3/8. So for deer, for bear, especially for bears, goats,
Goat.
Yep.
Yeah, you want that.
Something you want. It's I say anything deer size, bear, goat, all that stuff. It cuts such a wide path
Yeah.
We've had such success with it that I think that's the part that people really like. And yeah, I mean, we had tons of people kill elk with them last year.
Well, I've got them in my quiver now. You sent me 6, shot one at the bear. And I'm kind of weird. I will have in a 6-arrow quiver.
Kind of weird.
I know, really weird. I'll have 2 Hydes, 2 Jekylls, and 2 Whitetail Fury, or 1 Whitetail Fury in a some kind of a small game.
Right.
The thing with me is being cognizant of what's going on. If I'm in thick timber and I'm hunting elk, there's a chance I could nick a branch or something whatever, and if it's up close and personal in timber, I'm going to have a fixed blade head on, and people are like, well, what if my aunt could grow balls and become my uncle, and the elk could move and then run out to 80, or obviously it's I'm just making a choice that
correct.
In this situation, if I'm cold calling, setting up in a thick wooded area, I'm going to have a fixed blade. I can kill with any of them, but for me, the biggest thing that I like, the Hyde for a mechanical, is just trauma. Is damage.
Creates more trauma. No, 100%. And I tell people, and I do the same thing. I always carry a Jekyll, at least one, in my quiver, because it's hard to get any mechanical through brush.
Yeah.
And a fixed bladed broadhead can do that. Now, the huge benefit to all of this, if you have the Jekyll, the Hyde, or the Whitetail Fury, they all have the same impact point.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're taking, 2 different manufacturers and trying to match them up, and because the ferrule's the same, all you're doing is interchanging the blades. So that the front aerodynamics of that broadhead and the way the blades are designed, they get the same impact point.
And I will go into a little bit more depth on that. And I forgot I even had these out here. When you're talking about the same, so if you put this big Herkin monster on the front of this arrow, this is going to be 1 3/16 inches longer. This component here, any component, longer, which can change the dynamics or the paradox of the arrow. It could.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't shoot good enough to notice that. These just bend, and that's why I don't mess with them as much. But when you put this in the end of the arrow, right, it just barely overlaps the arrow, so you've got this hanging out, where these are uptight, the glue.
Yeah, the end of the arrow is basically right at the end of what you see, that green
30
color.
second,
Yeah,
or whatever the hell it is, different. So, if you have OCD, you're probably freaking out of what I just said, and I get that, and there's nothing wrong with it. I just think that when you don't, to me, you do not have to have one thing, meaning like you don't have to have matching camo. You can still kill stuff. You don't have to have matching broadheads, and I think that people do themselves a disservice by not mixing things up.
I agree. I agree. Everything's situational.
Yeah, and with Dale's system, the cool thing is like you just change blades.
Yeah,
that's the big one. So now, as I'm kind of going through this big ball of snakes, the Whitetail Fury, definitely one I'm going to use a bit more. And how I would weigh this out without going into I don't want to make any names up, but the debacle or the crazy point weight and impact, and are you going to go through a scapula? I want trauma. And I've guided a lot. I've hunted a lot. You've hunted a lot. The chances of you hitting the beefier part of the scapula or the knuckle and going through are the chances of you hitting the stomach are really big. And so I don't focus on the miracle side of me making it through the thick part of the scap or the knuckle. I focus on reality of diaphragm, liver, gut, or, God forbid, ass, the chances of hitting the femoral.
Right.
So if you do it mathematically, and this is what always kills me, if you take this phone, right, and this is your body of your animal, if you cut out all this over here, this is where you're probably going to hit and still kill it. Up here, that scapula and that knuckle is a very small part of the animal.
Correct.
So just off of sheer mathematics, you got a lot better chance of
the
hitting
odds.
yes. the diaphragm, stomach, and just like if I shot a deer with a 5.56 or 223 and I shoot it with a 338 Lapua, that Whitetail Fury is a Lapua. So that's like a 300 grain bullet doing, 2,900 feet per second. The chances of finding that deer or bear are better. So I like the trauma.
And it's interesting because I've always told people, it's like, there's any broadhead kills, you shoot it in the good spot, the heart, lungs, that animal's going to die. And there is never a situation. I understand it. I have stories of people accidentally shooting them with broadheads that they were using for practice. That they glued the blades closed, or whatever it is. So, and it happens. But what we notice with the additional trauma that the Whitetail Fury makes and the Hyde make on your good shots, most of the time you're having the opportunity, and we get this from customers all the time, that I just watched it, go 10 yards and fall over dead.
Yeah.
And so, yes, even though any broadhead's going to kill and you're in that situation, you don't have to track them. They just die. I mean, Dan Picard tells me all the time from Eastman's is he's watched 99% of the animals that he had or filmed die on camera because it's been that close. And then when you do gut shoot them, then that trauma is what makes that animal go lay down and not run off.
Yeah, which is what you want, and they go into the spirit world faster, which is what you want. So am I saying use a Whitetail Fury if you're shooting a 26-inch draw on 50 pounds? Nope. You should probably use a Jekyll. But if you've got a decent amount of speed and a decent amount of weight or what, you're going to be fine for, like bears and goats, I think people have the false idea are tough.
Yeah.
To put something through. You can poke a pencil through a goat and a black bear.
Right.
So as far as getting through, it's not a big deal. So again, the trauma is the big one for me. Now, I have sent you photos of wound channels from your Hyde that if the animal's broadside, the entry hole isn't going to be as big as the exit because of how they open. You're going to have an entry hole, and here's where I get a little twisted up, maybe you could say, is with people. If you're wanting to know if you should shoot a fixed blade or a Hyde, and then you're worried about the entry hole of the Hyde not being as big as the exit hole, but you're looking at shooting a fixed blade. Most fixed blades on the planet are still going to have the same size hole, potentially smaller, same size hole as the Hyde anyway.
Correct.
So you're not gaining anything, and I say that he sells fixed blades too.
Right.
But if the animal's slightly quartering to greatly quartering, your wound channel with the Hyde, I think I sent you the one, it's probably 7 inches long. It's not one you really want to promote because it's false hope.
Well, that's the issue. When we get those pictures all the time, and we have plenty of customers always ask us, hey, do you have any, entry wounds or, all this stuff? And it's like, we don't promote that because that's all situational.
Yeah. And every one I had was quartering not
hard.
Extreme, but hard.
Yeah.
When I say extreme, I'm talking about I have an inch to sneak it in front of the rear ham to get it. That's extreme. Hard is I've got 5 inches to sneak it in, to me.
And on angled shots, that's the cool thing about this broadhead is, this one blade just penetrates, and so it doesn't deflect. The main blade keeps penetrating, and what happens is that Hyde now slides between this blade, and when it drives that blade open this way, that's what's creating that larger wound channel.
Yep, and it does. And I do get the question, how many animals I've shot with the Hyde, and it's enough I don't know. When I say that, it's triple digits. It's up there. And I test, well, not so much now, probably in the last year, but probably up until maybe a year ago, we're shooting pigs and lots of aoudad and obviously the normal animals that I hunt. And so when you look at the pros and cons, like we're talking about, there's going to be some pro and some con of every head.
Oh, absolutely.
But I would say if, you're shooting generally 70 pounds, 65 to 80, whatever, and you're 27 to, 30 plus inch draw, you can get away with a Hyde no matter what. When you're
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so my daughter shoots 25.5-inch draw length, and shoots 50 pounds.
Yeah.
And she shoots the Hyde.
Yeah.
And the reason that doesn't hurt you is because it penetrates like any other fixed blade.
Okay.
So we're not draining energy there. So, because that's where you lose most of your energy is on the hair and hide.
Yep.
And so when you have a rear deploying broadhead that pits open as soon as it hits the hair, then you're asking a fully deployed broadhead to now have to cut through that.
Right.
And that's really not what you want. So for our things, if you're shooting...
Let's explain that again, because I want to make sure.
Slower way.
No, I got it.
Okay.
We talked about it. So if you're a lower poundage shooter and you shoot...
A rear deploying broadhead.
Yeah, a rear deploying broadhead. That rear deploying broadhead, when it hits, the blades slide back, right?
Right.
And open, and then that is taking all your momentum because the blades are open on the outside of the fur and having to cut through the
Correct.
fur. Yeah.
Correct.
Which is why you do get some crazy
Big holes.
entry holes.
No, for sure.
Where with this head, as it's going through, only a small amount is going through the hide, and then it's opening after it's passed through the hide, which doesn't take as much penetration.
Correct. So what happens is with those curved blades, that hide now slides between the blades.
And it's getting confusing because this is called the hide.
I know.
So there we go.
So when these curved blades hit the meat, they naturally want to follow themselves open.
Yeah.
And so we've shot it through, and I'll get some videos when I maybe I'll send some pictures for this post. But I've shot it through steel plate, like 22 gauge steel plate, and you actually see dents on the back side of the plate from where the broadhead deployed.
Yeah.
So it opens very rapidly, and so that's one of the things that you get that benefit. You're not draining the energy early, and when it's inside, there's nothing to slow down.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll, in the spirit of total honesty, when you get into the lower poundage stuff, there's not as much data.
Correct.
And when I say that, meaning I err to the side of caution because I don't have as much data with 40 pounds, 40 to 50 pounds and 23 to 26 inch draw.
Correct.
The one thing I want to make sure that people understand when you're going to Google, right? Google's a dangerous thing, and there's a lot of things that are said online with no data, right?
Correct.
And so
Correct.
I try to be very cautious with that because if I don't have the data, I don't want to speak upon it. So with like you talking about your daughter, my general rule of thumb is kind of what I said. That 65, even 60, but 65 plus, 27 plus, this is not going to be an issue for any.
No.
Any animal in North America.
No.
Even moose, and I've seen a lot of moose die. And when you are looking at, if you hit it incorrectly, you're kind of screwed anyway. And go ahead.
You're not going to get through a shoulder anyway. If you're shooting any kind of low poundage, a fixed blade is not going to help you.
Even high poundage.
Even high poundage for the most part. And for the record, we have tons of people ask us, how's the broadhead on short draw lengths? And so I'll obviously most of the people don't even furnish their information. But I'll ask, okay, what's your setup? And it's 27-inch draw length, and I'm shooting 75 pounds.
Which isn't that short.
No. And so one of the most successful hunters out there, Brian Barney from Eastman's,
Not very tall.
Not very tall. He's 26 and a half, and he shoots 70 pounds. And that's the broadhead he shoots on elk. And that's the broadhead he shoots on everything. But so I'm going to say short draw length, if you want to ask. If you're 25-inch plus and anywhere from over 50 pounds, I'm very comfortable with telling you can shoot the Hyde on anything.
No, and that's good to know. And you get stuck with your own lens. So I'm going to bring up like a Gillingham. Tim's got a 34-inch draw.
Correct.
And
Correct.
can get away with that's just how he's built. He can get away with anything. In my case, I don't have that long of a draw, but it's 28 and a half.
Same as me.
Average, yeah.
Yep.
But I shoot higher poundage. And with technology now, that RX-9, I'm shooting 288 at 73 pounds, 74 pounds with a 485 grain arrow.
Right.
Back in the day, 20 years ago, that wasn't happening, right?
No. The efficiency of today's bows is incredible.
It's crazy. And so when I'm picking a fixed blade head, it's not because I'm worried about personally penetration. It's just nicking branches. That's the only reason why.
In brush.
Yep.
I too. I mean, I recently made that movement to Hoyt in the RX-9, and such a great bow, by the way. But I shoot 28.5-inch draw length. I shoot 70 to 71 pounds, I think is what the bow is. 454 grain arrow, and it's 289.
Yeah. Yep.
So and the only reason I know what speed it is because people ask.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I'm with him.
I really don't, and so
I know because Garmin sent me that new.
So you're the cool.
And it's fun
I got to get one of those. Those things are awesome.
Yeah, it is fun to play. Yeah.
Yeah, they give you a lot of downrange information on how things work. And
I'd say that's right because I bet I'd have to look. My bow's probably I got a 1/2-inch draw length on you in 3 pounds.
Right.
3 pounds is probably 6 to 9 feet per second, and then I probably gain another 4 with my draw length.
Right.
But
you also have 40 more grains of arrow weight.
That's what I was trying to do the math because I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. I have a bow at 80, and it may be the 80 I got 280 something with 480, and I think it's 485 is my arrow.
Okay.
But when we're talking about speed, Chris Horn, a very good friend of mine, he has shoulder problems, but he's got a 30 and a half inch draw. And he's like, man, what if I go down to 65? And I'm like, bro, at 65 at your draw length, you're like me at 85.
Oh, yeah.
It's
super efficient.
So he was getting 268 feet per second with a 500 grain arrow?
At 30, that draw length, he's probably a little bit higher than 500 grain. And that's what happens when you get into the longer draw length. And we'll go back to Tim, in a little bit of you don't need a really heavy arrow, and I get it, but with Tim's draw length, the weight of his arrow is just, arrows are measured grain per inch, okay? So my arrow's cut at 27 inches carbon to carbon.
Same as mine.
Okay, so that's not the case. So he's gaining weight no matter what. So he's in that 450 grain arrow anyway.
Yeah, by default. And
default.
And he's trying to get to that. He's shooting the lightest arrow he can because he doesn't like heavy arrows. And so for me on the arrow weight, I'm old school, and I just got used to back in the day in tournaments, 280 feet per second, plus or minus 3%.
Right.
And that's the arc of my arrow, the speed I'm comfortable with. The tuning the arrow is a little bit easier at 280 compared to 300. The noise of the bow with that weight of arrow, it's what I've become comfortable with. Having said that, I've shot shit with, I think the lowest I've gone is 440. I think it was a Parallel Pro or whatever they call them,
Yep.
And the heaviest I've gone was 530. And something, and I don't, and again, this is personal choice. I range everything and I can judge pretty good.
Right.
So is the difference of 18 feet per second or 20 that big of a deal in my brain? For me, it's not that big of a deal at all. I'll hunt with a 260 feet per second arrow or bow. The thing is going to be what's most important to you. So if you can't tune very well, 300 is going to be a problem. Like you're going to have trouble tuning a 300 foot.
Something that's going that fast.
Yeah. But if you can't judge very well and you're worried about it, you need to become a better tuner because it's going to be difficult to get it to tune.
Right.
Now, having said that, God created mechanical broadheads for people that can't tune. You can get away with a decent amount with a mechanical with a relatively poorly tuned bow. It's not going to be perfect, but they'll hit close.
Well, and it's interesting because Yates is coming out with that study that he did at Easton's. Easton. And apparently they did do that. They took some bows out of tune and were shooting broadheads and different vane configurations and all that stuff in this test. And and that test should be hitting pretty quick. I know that he gathered a pile of data.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, getting your bow tuned, and I talked to a lot of people about this at TAC, and they say, well, how do they broadhead tune, or are they easy to broadhead tune, or whatever. If you have to broadhead tune your arrow, you have something wrong. Your bow's out of tune, or arrow setup and spine and weight are incorrect. A good broadhead should just fly like your field points.
Yeah, and I will say, back in the day, the broadhead tuning was a much bigger deal because you were shooting thunderheads and muzzies and shit. And when you were broadhead tuning your arrow, and I might start twitching from fucking with this back in the day. You're moving your rest an 1/8 inch right or left. You're bumping it up and down because your field points are here and your broadheads are here, and you're trying to get it, and they didn't hit in the same spot, and you'd have your bow dialed in for broadheads. Where now, the question of how to tune or the walk back tune, which really isn't a tuning thing, that's more of a sight leveling thing, I would say. The walk back tune thing kind of whatever. You
that's
can have
a shot on your rest,
pretty much, yeah. And so when you're shooting, for me, if somebody said, "How do I tune?" There's all kinds of stuff that I do, but basically just shoot through paper at 10 feet with a fletched arrow, see if it is tearing relatively okay, and then I'll torque some shit to make that tune well. But the thing is I'm making a field point tune well first, and once that's tuned, I shouldn't have to do really anything.
No, you shouldn't.
Now,
you really shouldn't.
If I'm tearing knock left pretty bad, more than most likely, a fixed blade head is going to hit to the right a little bit. If I'm tearing left bad enough, because the arrow comes out of the bow, right, and it's tearing knock left, and then just, physics, it's going to drift to the right a little bit. So, I've had people, I've had all kinds of things come across my plate. My bear shaft flies perfect, my fixed blade broadhead doesn't. Generally, I would say that if that's happening and it's really bad, your arrow was probably built poorly. It's probably not the head. You probably cut your shit crooked and your arrow's not spinning. The concentricity, meaning when you spin your arrow, it's wobbling like an out of balance tire.
Correct.
Something like that. Or it could be contact or whatever else. Because if everything's done correctly, I'll say 60 and in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fixed blades, mechanicals. And I've done it out here on film where I've got your Jekyll, your Hyde, a fixed blade, and a field point out to 80. Now, after 80, gravity and wind drag kind of come into play. But you should 60 for sure, probably 80 if you're good at tuning or whatever. Now, at 100, my hides hit, when I'm shooting good, slightly low. But I can't shoot well enough to really tell. But
there's
really
a certain
good
amount of drag with blades.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that. So when you get to those distances, that drag will start to take over.
But I can tell you, yesterday I dropped, I think that target's 120, and I have a hide I glued together, and I kill that deer every shot with the hide. Now, is that because I suck? Because I'm not? It's not. But I'm hitting as well as I can shoot at 120, which is a group about like this, right? It's a little bit bigger than a dinner plate. I just can't shoot any better than that.
Right.
So, if I dip bang a little bit or whatever, but for the most part, 60 for sure on in you shouldn't have any issue.
No.
The other thing is, I'm rambling. If you're shooting good 20 to 40, your arrow doesn't decide at 40 to suck, or 50 or 60. It's the Indian.
No.
the arrow doesn't magically say,
all of a sudden say,
yeah,
hey,
I'm going to fly back. So if you're like, hey, I'm hitting good out to 40 or 50, and I'm starting to hit low, you're fading out of your peep more than most likely, especially if there's a broadhead on, because you're probably mentally thinking about that. So you're probably diving into your string a little heavy, and you're fading out of the bottom of your peep. That can happen left and right as well. And so generally, I wouldn't say generally, it's the Indian, not the bow or the arrow.
Correct.
So
I'm
not
going
going
out and shoot more.
Yeah, just practice more. So as we're talking about that, though, one of the most asked about things was this, which I'm fucking blaming you, is the 5 Fletch. So for years back in the day, like way back, well, Dale's a little older than me, but way back. 5-inch Marcos were the thing to have,
that was
right?
what you had.
And you were shooting game getters. I don't know if, like, when you moved to a Super Slam, like, you were high on the hog.
Oh, yeah.
That Chuck Adams was the man back then. Although when I met him, he's a little different. He's not a live wire.
No, Chuck is an acquired taste.
Yes, but
good dude.
Good dude, and someone that everybody emulated, wanted to be. So rewind to the late 90s, XX78 Super Slam Selects. First they had the bushing that you put the knock in, and then they had the Super Swedge. And they had ASAT-looking camo that just made you a better hunter. And I think back then they were $60 a dozen. Game getters were $39.
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit different, right?
You don't want camoed arrows.
No, yeah. So
you want to look for them if you shoot not where you're hitting.
And you went from Marcos, Duravane came out. I'm trying to think. Some of the AAE had a ton of different vanes. And I went from shooting this giant monster. Yeah, Flex Fletch was another one. But like Flex Fletch back then, I'm dating myself. You had the SOS pad, your arrow. Do you remember that?
Yeah, you had to
scratch it. Yeah, and so as time went on, it was kind of like cell phones, right? Remember, cell phones were, everybody wanted a little one. Now everybody's got a big one or whatever. The fletching, like, I went from one extreme to another to back to normal, I would say. Like, then I was trying to hunt with 1.75, 2.2-inch fletches with a fix. I mean, it was a nightmare, and the reality was like, why? Like, what's the reason I'm shooting such a small fletch? And so I shot 2.6 AAE, the hybrids, for a long time, and then I shot 4 fletch forever. In truth, I shot 4 fletch because Tim Gillingham said to, and then he swears they shoot better. I think Kyle Douglas says the same thing. 4 fletch. So then I had 4 fletch forever, and then I went back to 3, 2-degree offset, helical. And, people talk about parachuting and
right.
I guess I'm at a stage in my life to where if I'm worried about parachuting of a vane at that distance, maybe this is the trad in me too.
Right.
I should probably become a better hunter.
Get a little bit closer.
And so I just went back to 2.6-inch 3 fletch.
Right.
Well, then you said, and I hate fletching arrows. I've just fletched too many.
Even though some people think it's therapy and they love it and they,
Oh, it's fucking therapy for me, just a bad kind. So I went for a while because I was shooting AAEs, and I got these glue-on fletches where you glue all 3 on.
Right.
And they work okay. They're easy, whatever else. Well, then you were like, try the 5 fletch.
Right.
Which I thought you were full of shit. I think I told you that. And so I got the AAE bits knob. You have to have that.
Yep.
And the Bitzenberger jig, and
those are the 23 air razors.
These are the 2.3 air razors. Now, I will say these air razors, this compound is different than the original. These don't have the memory that the first one.
Correct. So the air razors are different. It's a different material. It's stiffer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the memory that the Max does or the hybrid.
Yeah.
But that stiffness does a multitude of things. A, they're easy to glue. B, they're quiet.
Yeah.
And the reason behind the 5 fletch is what we found is we tested, because when Nick AAE came out with the Air Razor, we had 23s and then we had 26s, and come to find out, five 23s and 3 26s weigh the exact amount.
Same. Yep.
So they were shooting in the same spot, but in the wind, we were getting less wind drift.
And this is where I thought he was full of shit.
So when you talk about wind drift,
mathematically.
So this is a wall that the wind presses against. When you have 26s, the wall's taller.
Yep.
Because as it spins, it creates basically a wall, and the wind
airflow
pushes across it. Right. So the other thing is you have 5 leading edges.
Yep.
So that gives you faster recovery, which steers a broadhead better, which overall accuracy, especially at long range, is super important.
Yep. So when you do it redneck-wise, if you have 3 2.6s, which is a 2.75.
Right.
So you've got 6 inches, and then you've got the 7.5. So 3/4 and 3/4 is 1.5 inches. So now you have 7.5, and then you go from 7.5 to another 3/4. You have 8.25. Total.
There's
fletch.
not a redneck in the world that could figure that out like that. That wasn't redneck world.
Construction math.
Okay, construction math. There you go.
I'm more intelligent than I let on. So you've got 8.25 total.
Correct.
So with this, you've got you've got 5 fletches at 2 inches. That's 10 inches.
Right.
Right. Plus these are 2 3s. So then you add that up, significantly more vein than 3 2 6s. More vein.
More leading edge, but because the 2 6s are taller.
I'm getting there. Yep.
Okay.
So this is where I'm like, okay, Dale's not led me astray, because I've always liked a lower profile compared to a higher. Like, I hate bonding blazers. I'm not a fan. Never have been. Big ass, tall, short fletch, and it just wasn't my thing. I didn't like them. So I've always went with more of a lower profile. And the hybrid's not that high a profile, but it's not low by any means.
No.
So I fletched these up and just waited. The way I have my range set up, I can shoot whatever it is, 8 yards inside of my garage and be out of the wind totally. And then I hooked the capture digiscope thing up, right, and just filmed.
Right.
And it wasn't a significant difference, but it was a difference. So at 100 yards, these compared to my hybrids, roughly, right, I'm not that good of a shot, was about 4 inches in high wind, maybe 6 in drift.
Yeah, that's about what we figured out.
The other thing is these are quieter, and that was another part that I didn't really believe. Now, when I say quieter, a hybrid compared to the Hunter or whatever, there's multiple different options. I just put, I don't want to name all the brands, 7 different brands of fletching, and this one was just quieter. Now, there are people that talk about different studies or whatever else. I'm of the, Dale, go stand behind the target and tell me which one's louder.
Right. It's a real world situation.
And so what I do with that is I have him stand at 40 and I shoot at 80, so he can't tell what I'm shooting, so there's no bias to that. He can't see which I'm shooting, and I just shoot the arrows. And the best thing is to have somebody that is not a hunter, honestly, to stand down there to say which one they think is louder. I do the same thing with broadheads, right? To see which one's quieter. And so the wind drift actually wasn't as amazing as the noise. This was a very, very quiet setup. So now I've had to refletch all my arrows, you dick. And I say, I'm still not done. But also the rotation of these is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
And that rotation.
That's that 5 leading edges.
Well, and people would say that rotation is going to cause more parachute and slow it down. And yeah, I didn't see that.
We didn't see any speed difference between the two.
The thing is they have chronographs, the Garmin or a lab radar, or just shoot. And what I'll do is just tape a line, duct tape at 100, and shoot that line. Right. That's the easiest way for me to tell, because I'm the one shooting the bow. So if I'm hitting the same, whether I've got 5 fletch, 3 or 4 fletch or whatever, I'm just looking, does it impact in the same spot, right? I don't really care what the speed is. If this was 8 feet second slower or faster, if my ability is keeping me within reason in the duct tape, it's a win.
Right.
So
For sure.
So that's why I'm shooting 5 fletch. So to answer all the questions, if you're listening to this, you got to have an AAE bits knob. You have to have the 5 fletch bits knob, and you have to have a bits and burger jig.
Correct.
I have helical clamps. I shoot left helical, and I don't know how much helical's on there, but a little bit. I didn't measure.
Well, when you have the helical clamp, that's a set distance. That's a set rotation.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that you play with is your offset.
Yeah.
So
I said helical. I said that backwards.
Yeah. So
offset.
What you have is a helical clamp with an offset, and so we found that the bits helical clamp and a 2-degree offset seems to be the best overall accuracy, downrange accuracy, wind noise, all that. So that's basically where all my jigs are set up.
Right. And I would say that's close to 2-degree. You can't
you're right at 2-degree. It almost looks exactly like my arrow.
You can't get much more than there's not a lot of real estate on this arrow.
Yes.
So you start pushing that, you're going to have a hard time fletching.
Yep.
So now, I mean, as far as like explaining that or whatever else, there's other benefits to this. Indexing the arrow. Every now and then you'll have an arrow that's an outlier. It's not hitting correctly. Usually I'll just index to the next fletch and get it to suck in the group. You got 5 options here. So you can't not get that arrow to suck back in to the group. You can't fletch it wrong no matter what you do. So if you're shitting your pants, and let's say you go cock vein down instead of up on accident on a 3-fletch, you could potentially have contact with that cock vein depending upon how your drop away is set up. And God forbid if you're not shooting a drop away, you're certainly going to have issues. But with a drop away, you just snap it on, let it rip.
Good to go.
Yep.
And for those long distance shots, you get more sight clearance.
Yeah. And so when you talk about sight clearance, when you're really dropping bombs, so like for me, when I set my sight up, I'm not going to go into that. Once I get 20 dialed in and I get 20 to where I have the most adjustment in my dial, I shoot an AAE prophecy rest. I pop that prophecy up and I dial the sight down until I'm like, and then I back her up a hair. That's as far as I can shoot, but that's the broadhead and the fletch. And generally on a high profile fletch, it's sticking up way higher than the broadhead. Correct. So that's where you're going to contact your housing. And it doesn't take much to hit that housing and it's basically going to kick your arrow and you're going to miss. So you get an extra probably 5 yards, I would say, out of it, give or take.
For sure.
So I don't know what we want to cover any more on that, but that is what
all the questions that are coming up.
Yeah, they're coming up.
For sure.
The next one, releases. So with the releases that Dale offers, so these are the originals. These are old school. I think these were the first ones out.
Yep.
And I'm still using these. I have a standard Ibex. Actually, I don't. Chris Horn has it. He wanted to borrow it. But these are the standards, and I've used. So as you can see, this one's been beat up. This one's my primary, and I keep this in my pack. But I think I'm going to go to a small medium.
Correct.
Here, because it fits my hand a little better. So the biggest thing with this is when you take the Ibexes, which are these here, and the Shadow, your point of impact does not change between the Ibex and the Shadow. I've had one person said it changed slightly. The only thing I could think of is they had a short enough D-loop or something.
They were torquing it.
Torquing it. And it was very little, but that's out of a lot of people. So with me, I'm a hinge guy. I shoot a hinge a lot, but occasionally you got to rip one off, right? And so now I will say I shoot this one extremely well and may just hunt with this and not the hinge. The thing about that is if you have target panic, and these are wisdom words from Snyder, you probably should put this in your pocket for quite a while and practice it, 5 feet with the hinge over and over, build up repetition. So like the only way to learn something is blunt force trauma or repetition. Meaning if you do something wrong and I hit you in the fucking head, you're going to learn a lot quicker. Or you just have to practice it a lot. The thing is you have to practice with good form.
Correct. You can't practice bad habits.
Yeah. Well, otherwise that repetition is you're basically repeating horrible form, and you're going to be really good at sucking, right? So you have to work with good form. The thing that's nice with this, and I have well, you put them away the other day, 20 other releases probably. I've got all kinds of other releases. So I've got, Jesus, I don't, B3s and Longhorns and
Scott, Carter.
Ascent, Carter, the knock-ons.
Yeah.
I've got them all. And all of them make great releases. There is
They
a
do.
substantial click with them. And when I say substantial click, there is a audible click when you're shooting. This is not an audible click. I guess if you're really good hearing, you could hear it.
Yeah.
But you feel it. And so with this hunting-wise, and again, that one that's all marked up is the one I've hunt with. Hunting-wise, there's no audible click. You feel it. It's in the feel. And it's substantial enough that you know that it clicked and it's about to go off. The cool thing about this is one, both of these, you just hook to your D-loop and they stay on there. The other cool thing is I can be in a windy situation or an elk rut situation.
Correct.
I've shot a hinge as much as just about any human, so I can shoot walking animals, whether you think that's a good idea or not, with a hinge fairly
I did that
well.
in Illinois.
Yeah, I'm not big on grunting animals to stop anymore because I've had their belly hit the ground and shot over their back or backstrap them. So I'll shoot them walking. I think it's just better for me. I can grip and rip this thing off. Now I have the center barrel on this one, but without a doubt, I don't have to make any practice. I can just put this in my pack, get this out, and on a windy day or elk are rutting and running around, I can rip this off and hit in the same exact spot.
Correct.
So with the development of these, I'm curious, which one of these is outselling, or do you think will?
Oh, I believe the thumb will outsell the hinge because what I believe in doing events and stuff, we have people come up to us and say, "Oh, you have a release? What is it?" It's a hinge. It's like, "Oh, no," because they're afraid of them. And I call a hinge a 600 arrow commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. But the thumb button is people want to practice or learn to shoot with the hinge, but they want to hunt with the thumb button because they know they can make it go off right away.
Yeah.
And so in that, it's a great way to learn form, because you can switch between the two. We shot attack this weekend and shot a round, and I shot part of the round with the Ibex and the other part of the round with the Shadow because it started getting more windy.
Yeah.
So it was just I could control it a little bit faster. So yeah, all in all, that's what we like. I mean, it's got the same ring finger adjustments. It has the same ergonomics. We've really had great success with this. We're producing different size barrels now. So we're going to have this regular. We'll have a medium, or what we could call the small, a medium, and then a large. So for people with bigger hands that they want the barrel to come back a little bit further, then we'll have those for those too. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. But yes, I do believe the thumb because I think the overall general public wants a thumb button more than anything else.
And that's the biggest, I'd say, sales pitch, but it's not a sales pitch. That's the biggest asset for this system is you can practice with this all day long and hunt with this. Mm-hmm. The other benefit is it does clip on the string. Uh-huh. I don't like the hooks because a lot of times I want to leave it on, grab my bugle, grab my chew, doesn't matter, and it's still clipped on. So I'm not a big fan of the hooks. I've also seen with some of the hooks, you have one, you go to let down, you can rotate that hook off the release. Yeah. I believe that's how you shot my wall. Because I didn't see her hit the button. She just let down and it went off, and I was like, and it rotated off the hook. Yeah. Sorry, dear, she's laughing. So
we have audience.
Yeah. So again, that's a good part of the system, and then this being not an audible click, but an actual you
which
feel
you can
click.
Hook this on your D-loop too.
Yeah.
So that's the fun part about that is you can just clip it on. I've hunted a fair amount of blinds and tree stands or spot and stock that last 10 yards.
Yeah.
What do you do the last 10 yards? You have to be able to hook it on your D-loop because you may have to range something, so you have to let go of your release.
Yep. No.
So I think it's a big thing. And the Shadow is a single single sear system. You don't have to cock it. A lot of releases you have to cock, and then you have to close the hook. So it's a 2-stage process. This, you lock it just like you would an Ibex. Go on, click it, and you're good to go.
Cool. I'm running low on battery. The other thing, this you can set up hot. And when I say that, like I set mine up hot. I used to set them up stiffer,
Right.
but for the purposes of me using this, stiffer doesn't matter because I'm going to punch it off anyway because I'm shooting it to,
That's
to
what you're
get one
gonna use it
off. So you can set this up extremely pretty hot. The other thing I would say, this has far less chances of failing on you from debris. When you have a single compared to a dual sear or a cocking mechanism, that can get gunked up, where this one is going to have less of a chance to get gunked up in extreme, like dirty situations, I guess you could say. So, really, I don't have anything else I wanted to cover with this. Is there anything you wanted to hit on?
The only thing that I like to get out there for everybody else is we do get questions about blade sharpness, and I'm going to give you a quick theory of mine that's worked for me forever. The blades are sharp. They're not what I would call scalpel sharp, and the reason for that is we got to go back a little bit to the creating trauma part. And so when you take a blade and you make it scalpel sharp, you're basically shaving, a square product like this down to a point. And when you get that point super, super sharp, you're taking more and more material away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what that does is it creates this little bitty tiny edge. So when it does shoot or hit bone, it will roll or buckle or whatever. And so we believe in the sharp. I mean, trust me, I got plenty of cuts, and I shoot through almost everything I shoot at. But what that does is it retains that edge a little bit better, and it also creates a little bit more trauma.
Right. Well, and the trauma part, if you cut yourself with a jagged, or one of them stops bleeding quicker than the other.
Correct.
That's what it boils down to. Yeah.
So in that, it's everybody's got a paper cut, and what happens? You get a paper cut. You don't really know you got a paper cut until you see blood on the paper. So you're not stopping what you're doing. Where if you cut yourself with a serrated knife, you got cut. Yeah. You go sit down, you relax, you do whatever. Same thing with ribs. There's some broadheads out there that swivel around things.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally am not a proponent of that because I want to do damage. I want to break ribs. Almost every archer setup up there, even from 24-pound or 24-inch draw length to a 50-pound bow, is capable of breaking a rib. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever broken a rib,
yeah, it's painful.
Yeah, you go sit down and so that's what you want the animal to do.
Yeah, and I think that when you put a lot of animals on the ground, and this is where the internet kind of gets in the way of certain things. Back in the day, Arnold used to do these goofy workout presses to get everybody to follow him so he could laugh at him.
Right.
He'd make shit up. Some of the things on the internet are true, some are not. With me, it's just a matter of arrows through animals and what I've seen, right? And so, when you say these aren't sharp, general rule of thumb when I'm sharpening a knife, if you do this and it catches on the thumbnail, that's where you want it.
Yeah.
These do that.
Right.
Will you shave with this? I guess you probably could shave with it. It's difficult to shave with a rounded blade. But the only they are sharp. I think that's because I've had people tell me they've heard you say, they're not they are sharp. And when I say that, I did shoot an animal chest on at a distance I'm not even going to say, and it came out its butthole.
Right.
That was with a fixed blade. And, that was one of those things to where when the animal spun, the arrow whipped out of its butthole. So it went through the length of the animal. So it's not that they're not sharp.
Right.
They're just not scalpel sharp that you would find on a thinner blade.
Correct.
The problem with the thinner blade scalpel sharpness, they can chink depending upon the hardening. And the thinner they are, when I say chink, it will actually take metal
chunks off
of it. So again, one of the things with this is when you look at like a Dan Picar or a Brian Barney, myself, there's many others. Dale doesn't. Staten's another one,
yeah.
and I say this, I can't speak for other. Dale does not pay me, and Dale's never paid me. Although you've offered one before, but I believe in the product. Dale's a good guy. I shoot these because I like them, and I just ran out of juice on that camera, so we have this one. So looking at what a Picar, myself, a Barney, whoever else, I think Rogan's shooting these now. There's a lot of animals hitting the ground from these, and I would definitely take that into consideration when you're looking at buying them, because it's not I would say this is the most accurate fixed blade broadhead I've ever seen. Now, I think the Easton tested these, right?
Yep.
Can you say how they did? Do you know?
They did very well.
Okay.
So say that.
I would say that these, in testing of my own, will run with a mechanical head. Now, knowing the feedback, the questions I get, whatever else, this steel, what are these made of?
So the broadheads themselves, the 100 grains are made out of 70-75 aircraft aluminum, and all the steel, so 125 and up, are made out of 416 hardened stainless, and then the blades are made out of 420 hardened stainless.
So when you look at, for example, 420 or 416 isn't a sexy steel, I would say. When you look at the sexier steels, S35V, D2, A2, those are all, I would say, sexier steels.
Right, for sure.
And the only reason I bring this up, there's nothing wrong with any of those. I'm only shooting one arrow through one animal, one broadhead, and then I'm changing out the blades. And so for people that have brought that to my attention, if I was like a steel nerd maybe or whatever else, whatever.
Well, and you get the steel questions all the time, or the steel thing in the knife world, because you have that knife forever.
A life, yeah. So what I'm leading up to.
Yeah.
I don't shoot broadheads through multiple animals anymore, and I haven't for a long time. That's not for any other reason than that broadhead becomes a practice broadhead. And now I can, and when I say that, I can swap the blades out on these, and I say that, I've done that some. But for the most part, once I kill an animal, I 100% can pull these blades off, put new blades on.
100%.
Be fine. The ferrule, I have not had issues. Now, I only shoot the stainless. I don't know, but I haven't had issues with ferrules bending or anything else. I just take that and make it a practice head. When I get closer to season, I'm pretty much exclusively shooting, and I'm weird, nothing but broadheads. And when I say that, I've got hides glued shut, locked down. I've got my practice heads here, and I'm not
Plus
shooting.
You have the actual practice blade that we sell.
Yep. Yep. You've got those. Well, and again, I'm speaking for Snyder here. You don't have to do any of this shit.
Yeah, the practice blades or practice heads fly exactly like your broadheads do.
No, they do. I just don't. Well, I use those too.
Yeah.
But I'm shooting. When I get closer to season, I am picking one specific shot, cold bore, and it may be 68 yards, and I'm just going to grab one broadhead and let that rip.
Yep.
And that's just how I've done it over the years, to where I don't shoot field points anymore. The bow's dialed in a week before season. If I'm fucking with it, something's gone wrong. I'm just making sure that broadhead is going to hit where I want it, any broadhead, hides or whatever else.
Right.
And I glue the hides shut. I don't know if you recommend that either, but I tighten the thing down and I just put super glue in there, glue it shut, and I practice with those. And it may be a 120-yard shot or it may be a 26-yard shot. I only shoot broadheads when I'm closer to season. And I don't know if people do that anymore. That's more of an old school thing.
There are. We do get a few. I mean, we sell a pile of practice heads because they do fly exactly the same.
Yeah.
So we do sell a pile of practice heads. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, a
lot of people don't. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So for me, once I'm dialed and I know my system's good, I'll check tune right before hunting season to make sure nothing went out.
Yeah.
Never really does. Shoot some arrows, and then I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I'm weird, and I think that's the old school, the Chuck Adams
for sure.
days. I mean, Chuck would spin every broadhead, which I do. Like,
Right.
I'm half-assed. I've got like 4 length arrows right now I'm shooting. They're all a little bit different lengths. I don't give a shit. They all hit pretty close to the same.
Right.
Once season gets closer, every broadhead is spun,
Right.
concentricity's checked, everything is done at a very anal retentive level. And I have, if I go on a backpack elk hunt, I bring a dozen arrows. I bring 6 in the quiver and 6 extra.
I think that's a great idea.
And people are like, if you miss that much, you suck as a hunter. Shit happens. Shit breaks. Your bow falls. You may need to take some practice shots.
Step on them on accident, whatever it may be.
Yep. And so, if grouse season's open, might be whacking some grouse. And so, and I've seen guys, you can empty a quiver quick. I mean, it happens, and it may not be, you could be shitting your pants. You might hit branches. But the last thing you want to be is 4 miles in on an elk hunt.
And out of arrows.
Gone Winchester, right? And arrows aren't very heavy, so I bring extra arrows. But all of those are checked pretty meticulously. So, well, cool, man. I don't think I have anything else. I think we're going to go shoot and film some stuff. So, I really can't say enough about the products that you make. And you probably don't get as much credit as you deserve. I don't think people realize how many patents you have and what you've invented, how many people have copied patents of yours, things like that. So it's cool to work with you because you're always innovating. The one thing I do want to add, your other website, Dale has come up.
Shooting Solutions, yeah.
What's it again?
DP Shooting Solutions.
So DP Shooting Solutions, Dale has built basically a bracket or a mount. Well, you can explain it.
Yeah, it's for a lot of different things, but it's if you use a 45 offset mount
for an AR-15 type platform.
AR-15 and or what we've found in the long range rifle or regular rifle community, anybody with a pick rail, it's an adjustable offset, so you can move it tighter to your optics, move it further away if you're shooting a thermal. So the SEAL guys that had tested it, their acquisition times were about 50% faster. But in the hunting world, and I'm sure you've had this as a guide, you can put that on a long-range rifle. I actually have one on mine. And there's been times where you come over the hill and the animal's at 50 yards, and they can't find it in the scope.
Yeah. And I will say guiding, that is more common than not. Yes. It's a nightmare. So I was trying to figure out how to put one on my 30-30, my bear gun, because I have a scope on that.
Yeah.
Dialed up to 300, a 44, not my 30-30, my 44 mag.
Right.
Not a long-range gun. But I do have it dialed to it's a brush gun, but I got it dialed to 300. Because if you can imagine when Dale's talking about 45-degree offset, so gun's vertical, you've got your scope here. This is going to be mounted off the side. And so when I don't want to use my scope.
That box right by your elbow. Yep, right there.
So when I don't want to use my scope, you have this bracket here, and you can pivot this.
It's actually rookie.
Did I put it backwards?
There you go.
That's
like
what I meant.
This.
Yep. So you can pivot that. So when he says target acquisition, when you pivot your gun over to look through your red dot, you can set that up the most comfortable position for you.
Right. So if you were to go typical 45, which would be here, that means you would have to turn your rifle that far to get it to level. So if you take it and you adjust it up here and it's right next to your scope, your tilt's that. So you're acquiring that target faster. And in a red dot, like short range, brush, whatever, it's hard to look through an optic.
Yeah.
And so this, you just turn it and you're ready to go.
And when he's making fun of me, this is the pick rail attachment where it mounts on, to your pick rail or your rifle. It's pretty innovative, design. I know on the tactical side of things, they found many other things that I don't even think you realized that they were doing with it. Yeah, like door gunners and things of that nature. So, but yeah, definitely check out. You said it's
dpshooting.com.
dpshooting.com.
Yep.
Definitely something to look at for whatever if you're running an AR type platform. But I think I can mount this on my 30-30.
I think you can.
my 44 mag because that was the big thing I wanted to get it on there for. Yep. So, and you can run a Romeo 2. A Zulu, or what is it, an Oscar 8?
We have two different plate options. So we have the one that has the Roble, the Dr. Noble, and then we have the RMS and Leopold, and then we have the Trigicon RMR platform too.
Gotcha. Because I think I can get it mounted on this when I was looking at it. From
The Romeo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I used.
Yeah. Because I was
SIG.
I was fucking with it, trying to figure it out. So either way, well, dude, I appreciate you coming.
Absolutely.
By doing the podcast. If anybody has questions on this, obviously it'll be on YouTube. I'll post some reels of it, but you ask away. I'm out in my garage constantly playing with all of this stuff, so feel free to ask any questions. You can always get a hold of Dale.
Same with us too. Anything on social media, we're there to answer. And if you have a direct question, you can go to either website, evolutionoutdoors.com or dpshooting.com, and just go to the support page and ask your question, and we'll respond to it.
Cool. Right on, man. Well, yeah, thanks again for everything. Got any questions, ask away, and we're going to go fling some arrows.
Let's do it.